At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability, ASU isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Ladies and gentlemen, I had the opportunity to sit down with a powerful thought leader, an innovator, a transcendent human being. Her name is Devon Brooks. And to be in the room where it happened was incredible. One of my good friends, Natalie, called me. She said, "What was the highlight of your day?" I said, "Interviewing Devon Brooks." It was incredible. I love the way she views the world. I celebrate the way in which she moved through adversity in her life, including 2 accounts of sexual assault, major court cases associated with those, being one of the top entrepreneurs, CEOs in the world, one of the most fabulous under 40, and now having the realization that one of the most valuable things you can give someone is an expert coach. And so what she has founded is Sphere Guide, and that is a female-founded digital platform on a mission to support humanity by democratizing personal and professional coaching. So you got to go check out this app, sphere.guide. And of course, Devon reached out and said, "Here's a code for you, Beautifully25, to try this coaching app. You get 25% off your first 2 months of using Sphere, and you will not be sorry. You got to look into this." I've always said, what do you do? What do you do? You go find an expert. Go find somebody who's walked through the fire, they've walked through the weeds, and they can take all that information and put it in a knowledge and give it to you on a silver platter. I am a huge believer of coaching and the value that it brings. So Beautifully25, check out sphere.guide and stick around for Devon Brooks' incredible personality and heartfelt story. Big love. Welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast. I'm your host, Freddie Kimmel, and on this show we explore the survivor's journey, practitioners making a difference, and the therapeutic treatments and transformational technology that allow the body to heal itself. Witness the inspiration we gain by navigating the human experience with grace, humility, and a healthy dose of mistakes. Because part of being human is being beautifully broken. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast. We have a superstar on the podcast today. We actually have a human being who is named one of the 30 most fabulous, not the best, the most fabulous entrepreneurs by Profit Magazine. And Devon Brooks joins us today. Your list of achievements, it's intimidating. And Devon, how are you?
I am so excited to be together. I am wonderful and grateful, and I'm rocking at a 9 out of 10 today, which is actually quite surprising because I'm so tired and I'm still feeling really groovy.
Good. I love that. I have those days too. It's just like you can't stop the beat, as they quote in the Hairspray Broadway show. Like when you're on purpose and on point, the energy just like come through the channel.
Yeah, the energy just comes right through the channel, and that channel is just gratitude. It's like just showing up with a smile on your face.
Mm-hmm. Devon, I mentioned, one of the 30 most fabulous entrepreneurs. What is that? What is that? How do you identify? What does that mean to you?
Oh gosh, what does that mean to me? I think that means that I have a lot of fun with what I do, and that my work is just massively integrated into how I live my life. It's my work is always a part of my DNA and the fabric of what I want to see in the world. And I think that it means that there's a lot of joy in that, and not just for me, but in how others experience and perceive that. I hope that it means that it's what I'm doing is radiating joy and gratitude and really like the privilege of doing hard things.
Do you have a way in which you would define the word entrepreneur?
Swiss Army knife.
Right.
Entrepreneur. I perceive entrepreneurship as people who professionally seek to solve problems or to improve and enhance, and will do that through highly creative and or challenging endeavors where the path is uncertain.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that. I often say to people that many of the things I'm leaning into, they don't have a good example of success yet. So a lot of times I'm figuring it out on my own because it's new and unique, but the drive or the light at the end of the tunnel is very strong. And I'm like, I'm just following that North Star wherever it is, because I believe in this thing that needs to be accessed by more people or experienced by the greater collective.
Yes, it's knowing the earth is not flat and setting out on the high seas with no map and only your moral compass to prove that there's another possibility.
Have you ever listened to someone debate flat Earth?
No. Is it outrageous and awesome?
It's awesome because they're really good at it. You have to be. No,
You have to be.
You have to be, because from my understanding, it's round. It's round. And the people who are so into this idea, they have great data, they have physics, they have reasons why it would make sense. I just suggest if anybody's out there and you want entertainment and you really want to be wowed, there's some really wonderful people on YouTube that debate flat Earth. So we're going to move on from that, and we're actually going to move into...
I don't know if we can, Freddie. You know what I love about this is it is the perfect example of how we can create an argument for anything. And that is so dangerous. And what interests me, and is certainly the impetus of why I'm doing what I'm doing at this stage of my life, is what interests me is existing in the space of boundless possibility, is existing in the space of curiosity. And you can't be there and create from there and imagine a new earth from there if you are existing in a fixed mindset, existing based on a set of principles or old data.
I love that. There's always new information coming in, and I'm a firm believer that as new information comes in, I'm open to change my opinion on anything. Mm-hmm. Shockingly so, because if you would have, even like 5 or 6 years ago, if you would have told me, I can't, I want to bring it into politics, but if you had told me one thing, I would, like a belief system that I'd always have 5 or 6 years ago, it's dramatically different than how I feel today. I was like, wow, I just have such a different view of the world's political stage after watching it just be sort of a shit show. And yeah, great lessons to bring into our own life. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because that's another podcast. I want to talk about beauty. I want to talk about some of the things that you've pulled from the energetic into the physical, like maybe the world's first and largest chain of blow dry bars. I'd love to just know, because I think that's an impressive thing to create something. Why did you create blow dry bars? But first, could you maybe just explain to the audience, what is that?
What the hell is a blow dry bar?
What's a blow dry bar?
So blow dry bar is a space dedicated to wash and style. So catwalk quality styling, blow dry styling without cuts or colors. And what that was really inspired by was a look at the salon environment and the salon business model, and realizing in conversation with my business partners that the salon model hadn't actually been designed to optimize blow dries or styling or finishing is another word. So they'd only been built to monetize, leverage, and optimize cuts and colors. So actually, the most important part, which is the finishing, it's that like va-va-voom moment where you actually feel like $1,000,000, was
Yeah.
an afterthought. And it was an afterthought that was overpriced and inconsistent and took too long. And so when we realized that the salon model hadn't actually succeeded in contemplating blow dries as a part of the salon experience, we thought, well, what if we pull it out and give it its own space and create an experience around the blow dry as its very own thing? And that was a huge success. When we launched Blo Blow Dry Bar, I was 21 years old. We opened our first location here in British Columbia on the west coast of Canada in Vancouver, BC. And we started what became the fastest growing category in beauty over the subsequent decade.
Wow. At 21.
21. Yeah, I was 21.
Yeah. There must be some genetic tenacity or superpower that's programmed into your DNA to do that at 21.
There is. There is. I had the incredible gift, and this isn't true for everybody, but for me, it most certainly is. I had the incredible gift of a parent, my mom, who I started that business with, who was deeply entrepreneurial. And though we actually didn't talk about the concept of entrepreneurialism as a family, it was actually never really a topic. I don't even think that I considered entrepreneurialism a pathway, but I actually didn't consider anything else other than finding a problem and solving it.
Mm-hmm.
But she had started a few businesses. Her first one was, I believe, roughly around the time I was 5 years old. And they'd all been sort of B2B. None of them were very consumer focused or heavily brand oriented, but all in the space of working with people, conflict resolution, and injury risk prevention. I was raised by a coach. My mom is an extraordinary leader and coach. And so I watched this incredible human being see opportunities in spaces where there was a chance to reimagine something, to do it better, to do it different, to make it more accessible, to rethink it, and then to go out and pursue that. And I watched her do that again and again. And so, it's no surprise to me that I was not the kid who, thought she was going to go to school and be a doctor or a lawyer. Or for me, it was just all about looking at spaces and markets and opportunities. And she and I had really been talking about starting a business together since I was probably 14 or 15 years old.
And what does it mean to you or where do you see the value in the end product of Blow Dry Bar? The idea that, that to look and feel fabulous, sometimes working from the outside in to let the internal shine.
Mm-hmm. So my mom and I, we would always write down business ideas on napkins at restaurants, which is where we would, over a coffee and throw these concepts back and forth. But when we landed on Blow Dry Bar, we were actually on the phone, and I was living in London, England, going to school at the London College of Fashion. And she was in Vancouver. She may have been in Edmonton for a conference. And I think it was the 100 most powerful women in Canada. I think it's called WXN. And she was leaving that event, and she calls me Bean. That's my nickname in my family. And she was like, Bean, the 100 most powerful women in Canada look like shit. I was like, what? And we had, a really cheeky laugh. And she's like, well, it was wild. Everybody had really contemplated how they were showing up, and they'd, considered their outfits, all their nails were done, but everybody had like gym ponytails. And we had a giggle, and then we're like, well, why is that? And then that sort of segued to us talking about how there really wasn't anywhere to go for a fast, affordable, really excellent blow dry. And then we talked about, well, why is that? And how much do blow dries cost in some of the key cities in the world. And at the time, the average blow dry was anywhere from $100 to $150 if you're walking into a salon in New York or in LA or in any kind of key cosmopolitan city. And it just would take an obscenely long amount of time. You'd walk in, somebody who'd be sweeping the floor would start you because the main stylist was working on someone else, and they would just sort of tend to you in between other clients. And that was the reason for it always taking an hour or an hour and a half or even 2 hours. And we had experienced the feeling of, having something as simple as the care of getting your hair done and the immediate feeling of pride and confidence and the desire to self-express. And so for us, although it was very much a business that was about blow dries, that's what we did. We sold blow dries, but the reality is that we knew we sold confidence, and that was what you were getting after you had your blow dry, was really a feeling of looking at yourself in the mirror and feeling just that little bit, more ready to go into the world and nail whatever was next for you.
I love that. And so on this journey, and it's been incredibly, incredibly successful, on this journey from the School of Design in London, the fashion, and your road to launching this huge company. We're on the Beautifully Broken podcast. So we often mention where in the road, if you've had any, maybe you haven't, if you've had any moments of adversity, and if there was a time that was really hard for you in your life on this road from these ideas with mom to today, what would that time be that was really challenging for you?
Oh gosh, there are so many. And challenge or trauma is relative, right, to the person who experiences it.
Right. Great point.
And yeah, and what it is always amazing to me how levels of pain can be the same over really, really different experiences, and not to minimize each other's challenges, because we just have such different information and such different life experiences. And certainly for me, the most important experiences around sort of my formative years as a young adult were really robust. I was preparing to launch this incredible concept, and I was dealing with two simultaneous Crown Court cases for two violent events that I had experienced. I was raped when I was 18, and it was, what you would imagine it would be. It was tragic. It was shocking. It was derailing and debilitating, and forced me to examine parts of myself and be critical of myself in ways that, really never needed to take place. And what I mean by that is there is such a thing of examining the ways in which you may be responsible for being raped. And the reality is you are not responsible for the choice of another person to inflict harm on you. And that process was about a 5-year-long court case that eventually led to a guilty plea. I was raped by somebody that at the time I would have called a friend, and that I had known for quite a while. I'd lived in close proximity with as a young person, and somebody who I felt I trusted. And when that happened, I definitely was rocked. I spent a couple of months laying on my parents' sofa in either total distress and agony or complete detachment and silence. And then I got on a plane and flew to London, England to go start university, and really tried to have a very forward-looking approach. And then another incident happened, totally unrelated, in London, England, another person altogether. And he forced his way into my home at knife point, attacked me violently and physically for about 8 hours until I was able to talk him into dropping the knife and leaving my apartment and turning himself in. And so that was about a month or two after we'd opened the very first location of Blo Blow Dry Bar. And if you can imagine, this incredible momentous experience of stepping into leadership, stepping into entrepreneurship, shouldering the responsibilities of growing a brand, nurturing and caring for a team, being accountable to business partners, and navigating as a 21-year-old, two simultaneous court cases for violent crimes that you'd been a victim of. It was extremely overwhelming, and it required every cell of my being to be showing up in integrity as best I could in my business and to see those cases through.
I feel like we need a moment of silence and one deep breath from the audience. So let's go in. Oh, I wish Zoom would allowed hugging. I just hold. Yeah, I did hug you. I'm holding so much space for you, and the gravity of your story and your experience that you just offered. It's wild to consider the polarities of the things that you were going through at the same time. And a couple things came up for me as you're sharing your story. I'm amazed at the strength and the perseverance of the human spirit. And at the same time, I'm amazed at the vulnerability we open ourselves to by agreeing to be humans.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and you were entertaining the extremes of those polarities at the same time. I celebrate you for being here today and obviously continuing to do the work to heal all those. It's like just these trauma after trauma after trauma that are really do hit the human spirit and the soul. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start this episode, I need to mention how I've upgraded my oral health and my immune system response in the last 30 days. I started using a supplement called Silver Biotics, and they have a line of products that incorporate silver, a century-old technology, utilizing silver, which is a metal with the highest electrical conductivity on the planet, but they've biohacked silver and literally surrounded these particles with a molecular coating that allows it to work much, much better. And when I say much better, I mean they have 420 independent studies, 60 patents, and it is 4x more potent than any silver on the market. So this is going to work on things like bacteria, mold, fungus. My result, or my N=1, is my gum health. My gums are like pink and glowing. They look amazing. And then I've just had a better balance, or I would say an even immune response after about a month. I would have you have this in your cabinet. If there's one thing we overlook, it's oral and dental health. And every single tooth is wired to an organ in your body. It's one of the most overlooked things I see people jump around. And this is something that is cheap, it's affordable, and you can get a great discount. It's like 20% using the code Beautifully Broken. So go over to silverbiotics.com and check them out. How are you today with the two events? How would you rate yourself if you want to give yourself, we could say 0 to 100. Are you healed? Are you healing? How do you view that?
I don't know that I view it that way at all. I have a lot of pride and respect, pride in myself, in the way that I have navigated these challenges, and respect for what it took and continues to take for myself and for others who've had those kinds of experiences to go out in the world with an open heart and a dream, and to continue to preserve those things. And, that is really what I'm most prideful about is that I don't think those experiences have resulted in me being guarded or less of myself, but actually more open and more of myself. And I'm extremely grateful for the gifts that those horrible things ended up giving me. And they became gifts because that's what I chose for them to be. I opted for them to be gifts.
Do you have a couple examples of what those big gifts were from those experiences?
Oh, God. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that is most paramount for me is the gift of learning. So these are, when I say gifts, what I mean is they're all learnings that I received and integrated. And one of the learnings that is most paramount for me is around the concept of goodness. And I don't believe in bad people. I believe in bad decisions and bad choices and bad behavior. And I believe in accountability. I believe in restorative justice. I believe that hurt people hurt people. One of the, incredible phrases of a mentor, Gabor Mate, who's from Vancouver, BC. And for me, those experiences really grounded my being in that awareness of the goodness in the world. And when I look at people who even have made the most despicable and horrendous decisions, I have compassion for what may have brought a person to such a place where the way in which they move through the world is only through pain and suffering and inflicting harm on others. And so that gift, that knowledge has really allowed me to focus on harnessing goodness, to focus on preserving goodness. And I'm not talking about la vie en rose, like seeing everything through rose-colored glasses or believing only in goodness, but just choosing to focus on harnessing goodness, and in turn, knowing and believing in justice and transformation and evolution. And so, that came out of being in total forgiveness of both of those men who committed those violent acts towards me. Total forgiveness, prayers for them in their own journey, prayers for their own suffering. Some of the sufferings I'm aware of, some of them I may not be aware of, that may have brought them to a place where they were choosing really such awful things for themselves. And, another gift is this feeling of, and I know in my heart that anybody who's had this experience knows what I mean. But once you think you're going to die, like, the worst has happened. And so I'm just not afraid of embarrassing myself. I'm not afraid of getting my feelings hurt. I'm not afraid of trying things and fucking up. I'm not afraid. And that doesn't mean I don't feel fear. I feel that I have a really keen understanding of consequence versus likeliness and of what I can handle. And so that for me has allowed me to move through the world with such an openness of heart and a readiness to try things being concepts, projects, businesses, relationships, and moving through the world with love as the priority.
It's such a powerful statement when you can offer your lived experience or concept of forgiveness from the history. I think I'm so excited for people to see how that lands. But for me, it's I agree with you so much. It's so powerful and freeing to look at something we could look at an unfortunate event or, I wish I could wipe that clean of my history. And I've had people, they look at me sideways and I was like, oh, metastatic cancer was the best thing that ever happened to me. And there was this doctor I saw, like the audience is like bored of me telling this story. It like 5 or 6 months in, who was like, oh, I had found like this little mass, and he was like, don't worry about it. It's not cancer, And so I just waited and waited and waited. And so it could have been one of those things where I could have literally like made a career of like destroying the medical system or, this type of practitioner and seeing a young male this way. And at the end of the day, there were so many lessons that I pulled from that. It's like, for me to take dramatic, radical ownership of my life leading up to that event has changed how I choose to tell that story, how I choose to see that story. So it's always amazing to see human beings do that. It's like when people are at their very best, they're able to pull the good out of life, which we could always be reminded we're like on a rock and it's like spinning around a ball of fire in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of other nowheres. And to choose goodness or choose kindness out of this, that's greater than any superhero in the Marvel universe. Certainly. So I'm nominating you for a superhero, Devon.
Oh God. Well, you said it. It's the power of choice. And I know that you cannot choose what happens to you, but you can choose how you respond. And for me, that has been one of the most empowering concepts that I have held with me in this life experience so far. And it is that everything is my choice. There is a choice for me everywhere. And that for me puts the responsibility on my shoulders, which is where I want it to be, because that means I'm in the driver's seat. No matter what happens, I'm in the driver's seat. I get to choose how this lands. I get to choose what this means. And there's nothing more empowering than knowing that ultimately, whatever life throws my way, whatever happens, I ultimately get to choose what it means, and I get to choose how it lands.
Yeah, that's a great avenue I'd love to explore. How do you, Devon, explore, or I want to say, how do you expand the gap between that stimulus and response in which you get to choose in your way? Do you have any life practices, things you
Viktor
do?
Frankl.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, talk about adversity.
Well, there is so much great intelligence for us around this. Like if you're a person who needs science to believe things or to validate, what is intriguing to you or feels real, there's so much interesting intelligence all over our lives, from everything from how to avoid moments of road rage, which sometimes is the difference of like 3 to 10 seconds. Just 3 to 10 seconds of breathing, sitting in your car and breathing before you flip someone the bird or, step out of your car and start an altercation. We're talking seconds. It just takes seconds of down regulating and stepping back into your own skin to change outcomes like beyond our wildest imagination. So that is a huge practice for me, is just allowing pause. Pause can be seconds, it can be minutes, hours, or weeks, whatever it actually needs to be, given whatever the thing is that I'm confronted with. Pause. I'm taking pause. And I'll say it again, taking pause. Pause is the thing that changes reaction to response. It's what transforms reaction to response, because it's where we actually get intentional about how we choose to behave or reply to a situation. Without pause, you're not responding, you're just reacting. And so pause is critical. And pause varies based on the severity of whatever it is that you're grappling with or whatever it is that you're confronted with. when it's something that requires a lot of contemplation or communication, then I would say that warrants an even longer pause. When it's something that is about, knee-jerk reactions or diffusing yourself, then we're talking something as simple as seconds between, the anger or rage that you feel in a moment. Like peace is seconds away. Grace is seconds away. It's just seconds away. So that's where breath work, using breath, whether it's soma, whatever your techniques are. For me, it is choosing breath and choosing pause. Another, I know we're both big fans of Othership, which is such an incredible app for people to be able to use when you need pause. And there's a great one in there called the 1 minute breath that would be perfect for helping yourself down regulate or to diffuse so that you can move from reaction to response. And then when things are even meatier, contemplation and reflection is even more critical, right? So where communication comes up, and that's really why I'm in the business that I'm in, and this beautiful continuum of like concrete experience, reflective observation, abstract conceptualization, and active experimentation. So this like continuum that allows us to transform our thoughts and feelings into actions and behaviors that are beneficial for us is another huge tool for me. So breathwork, coaching, which is how I achieve that. And then the third really big tool for me is getting physical. So mountain biking, running, cold plunges, hot colds. I utilize all these tools every day.
Yeah. Amazing. Your list is incredible. I can't wait to do a biohacking day when we're in the same city.
I'll take you mountain biking. We'll get in full garb.
Oh my God, that's scary to me. What about snowboarding? That feels, I like that.
Sure. Backcountry snowboarding.
I love it. Yesterday, I was listening to Peter Attia and Huberman, and they were talking about longevity and lifespan and health span and how you separate these two and how you quantify. And sometimes it's even from the high performance experts, I can pull out or abstract the degrees to which somebody could really utilize these techniques for healing from a trauma. And the one that I always glaze over, maybe it's my bias because I had a lot of physical things happen. So sometimes it was like mental, emotional recovery, but exercise is so understated. And they pulled out the science on every single thing in the world, smoking, genetic risk for cancer. They could find no greater indicator towards driving longevity and health span than exercise. Nothing touched it. And it's just a great reminder that the body is this battery that creates more energy when we move. And there's so many times if you think about even where you were retelling your story, and there was this time you were on your parents' couch, right? And so the body like almost pulls its systems in and it shuts down and it makes space for that emotional processing. And then part of that healing can be, I don't know if you have moments like, I remember like the first couple times, like going through some trauma, the first time I got up and like went to the gym and I was like, oh my God, everything was, I had these moments of mass clarity because the current and electricity was running through the organs and the chakra centers. And all of a sudden my brain was connecting with the body. And there was a greater propensity to heal because I had done some of that work. I don't know if you can relate.
Oh God, absolutely. I mean, I love that you get out and go to the gym. For me, it's all about nature. I need to do whatever the physical thing is outside in the trees, sometimes barefoot. And that helps to ground me and regulate me. So much beautiful science around the power of being physical and exerting yourself in nature. Everything from like negative ions to what it means to have your feet on the earth and to be really connected and grounded, and how that affects right away your nervous system just by having your skin touch dirt. So yeah, these are definitely all things that I really, really have leaned on. Gosh, dial back to those early years of Blo Blow Dry Bar, where I was very much in the throes of those court cases and in the early months of a PTSD diagnosis. And I mean, running, yoga, all of these things were so fundamental. And when I say like I use all the tools all the time, this is no, I'm not talking about like I get up and I like do my little meditation at my altar and then I journal. Like, no, like I do it all the time, because what I need, what is most powerful in each moment can shift, right? Like whether it's mountain biking or running or my altar or breath work or grounding myself in dirt or a cold plunge or laying in a river. Like what I need so many tools, because sometimes the time that you have for a pause changes. If you've only got 2 minutes to create pause for yourself, then you need a list of 2-minute long things that you can fucking do to allow yourself to step back into your skin. And so, yeah, the list is long for me. The list of physical things is long. Everything from using psychedelic medicine to breath work to coaching to therapy. You need to have all these tools in your toolbox so that you can orient to the one that's going to be the most powerful in the right moment.
I've become increasingly aware of the way environmental toxicity affects my body. Now, in the past, I've tested high for mercury, lead, cadmium, glyphosate, and mycotoxins from mold. Now, I know what you're thinking. That is a full bucket. And even worse than the list of toxins was the fatigue, the neuralgia, and the brain fog due to the burden on the system. So luckily, I was introduced to the Ion Cleanse Foot Bath by AMD at a wellness conference. The system uses both positive and negatively charged ions to help eliminate these harmful toxins from the body. So my N=1 experiment? After 4 months, I've watched most environmental toxicity fall by more than 30% through diagnostic testing. So for me, this is a win-win. The Ion Cleanse by AMD is a fan favorite of the podcast because it's safe, it's effective, and it's a non-invasive way to cleanse and purify the body. So as a special promotion, Ion Cleanse by AMD is offering a free 15-minute consult where you can explore your personal needs to see if this technology may be the right solution for you and your family. So schedule your free 15-minute phone consult by selecting the link in the show notes, my Instagram at FreddySetGo, or FreddySetGo.com. Friends, this is a heart-centered company. The support team is amazing, and they offer a 60-day, 100% money-back guarantee. That is zero risk for the customer. So if you're ready to purchase, visit www.amajordifference.com and mention the Beautifully Broken podcast is your referral source. Namaste. I believe so much in, I would say, I'm trying to think if I have an ultimate. I have to go back to just the ice and the cold for 1 second, just because our good mutual friend, Robbie, we talk about cold exposure. And I was trying to think of, I don't know if there's anything so profound as getting in like 30-degree water when you're not ready for it and you have nowhere to go. Like you have nowhere to go but your breath. I mean, you could panic. You could choose panic. It's just such a great example of how we can be met with this incredible adversity from an outside temperature, which is an extreme differential from our own, and choose to breathe. And I'm always like, I get out of that water. I was like, I can do anything. Anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm known in my neighborhood as the naked woman because I have a lake just 50 meters away from my front door, and I live in the mountains in BC. So in the winter, the lake freezes, and I walk out there with my big puffy coat and my boots and my little towel in hand, and I walk out barefoot onto the ice, and I open my grave size hole in the ice with my axe, and I get in there butt naked in the dead of winter in minus temperatures, and I go for my cold plunge. And that is a daily practice for me. And the more intense the time, like probably the more times I do it in a day, in between calls. And if I'm going through a period of really intense output, then I'm doing it even more.
Yeah, it's incredible the science on relieving your allostatic load which is your total load of stress through ice. And yeah, you stack that with the breath and it's an absolute game changer. And I look around at the world and what we're going through right now, our unique set of challenges, which I don't think are worse. I just think they're different. And breath and ice, breath and cold is pretty accessible to many people.
Mm-hmm.
It's really one of those things. It's like, wow, it's like, talk about access to immediate state shift, right? You don't need to go buy anything really. Hopefully you can get a cold shower. You might be lucky enough to live in British Columbia. I've got a barrel with a chiller with a circulating pump that keeps mine at like 40 degrees. So like you said, and I'm having a bad meeting, I'll often even like transfer a call from computer to phone, Zoom call in the barrel for 3 minutes. I'll jump right back into it. So it's just it's a theme that comes up between many, many, many high performers. The value of, I think is really accurate to say what you're doing with Blow Dry Bar. And I also want to get into your new creation that you're birthing or that is birthed. It's not normal for the human design to be like, let me go start all these companies and manage these people and all these channels of energy coming in and out, whether that's money or access to a service or something on the other side. It's not normal. So we have to look at outside of the box tools to help.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, I'm just excited for all these things that we're talking about to not be so outside the box anymore, for them to be very much inside the box.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. But I mean, they're getting there. They're getting there. And it's really exciting. It's really exciting to see these modalities start to be way more a part of conversation and culture. And, it's why I'm so passionate about coaching, because the more that I see, things like breath work, things like psychedelic medicine be a part of conversation and consideration, the more coaching becomes imperative, because, something like psychedelic medicine is nothing without integration.
Nothing.
It is absolutely redundant without an integration plan.
Yeah.
And, that is where the power of coaching comes in. And, from a neuroscientific perspective, when you do things just once, it's actually like throwing spaghetti at the brain. So why this idea of integration or coaching is so imperative is because it actually means that we can cultivate change on the same continuum that coaching facilitates. So our brains need what I talked about before, like the experimentation, the concrete experience, the reflective observation, and then the abstract conceptualization to be able to create long-lasting change within our brain. So when we talk about like the book, How to Change Your Brain, all these pieces are so imperative. And psychedelic medicine, breath work, what we observe in those experiences as we downregulate, as we step into another awareness. Well, what then do we do with that? And how then do we take what we observe, what we hear, and actually change our lives as a result of what we learn and what we observe in those experiences? And so, yeah, I started working on Sphere, my current business, a couple of years ago. When I sold Blo Blow Dry Bar, I followed my mom's footsteps and became a leadership coach. And I did that across Canada and the US and Mexico with my Spanglish for about 6 years. And I started to just see, such problems and such evidence of efficacy in coaching. And so the efficacy in coaching was that we were now seeing hardcore data out of, institutes like Harvard and Stanford that demonstrated that coaching actually cultivates things like social intelligence, emotional intelligence, creativity, increased optimism, which is one of the most important indicators of long-term well-being. Like right up there with exercise is optimism. And optimism is so critical because it's actually how you approach everything.
Mm.
And so I started to see this data, but alongside that, I was like, wow, coaching has a bunch of problems. It's too expensive. It's exclusive. It's really white. It's hard. The barrier to entry is so massive. Where do you find the right person for you? How do you know if they have the right training and specializations for what you need? The only way to find a great coach was by referral. And that kept that ecosystem so intimidating and exclusionary. And so, I thought, wow, as we move from this world of like reactivity to responsiveness, that is the same move as the move from reactive care to proactive well-being.
Mm.
And we had started to see yoga, meditation become so much more a part of popular culture and of our language. It was really clear to me that we were moving towards a time when these things were going to come to the forefront. Breath work, psychedelics, coaching, like we were going to go back to the good shit. And I wanted to make it available. And so Sphere is really democratizing and reimagining the way that we access and deliver coaching so that everybody gets the guidance that they need to grow and has access to integration. So we have sort of like a class pass inspired business model where you can, have that barrier to entry like really cut down for you. So you can like jump that when you're ready. You take a little assessment, we look at your needs, match you with the best guides for you, and make it really easy for people to get started on this process of integration and this process of continual long lasting change.
Yeah, it's an incredible site, sphere.guide. It's beautifully done, very inviting. Oh my goodness, it's like 12 years now. Institute for Functional Health Coaching, history of being a personal trainer, a mental emotional coach, a gut health coach. I have just seen there's such high value in connecting with an expert. And what they've done is you've had somebody really, they've done the deep dive. They've sorted all the information, which we're drowning in information, really looking for knowledge, and they've digested that for you. And so it's like, I always go back to this thing. We don't do a lot alone. Most of the magic happens in community. And it's really interesting that I'm always aware of this because like you said, without the integration, if you're left to your own devices, you could have an ice bath in the backyard. It's like, what do I do with the shift? And until you've had that understanding, it's like, how do we get someone to hold the mirror up to us, which is what the coach is doing. They're creating some level of community, some level of accountability, some level of mirroring to allow you to see how you're processing and then gently give you these cues to move forward. And it really does, in my experience, it saves us so much time. It brings so much value in amplifying the mission of what we're here to do. Or maybe that coach is going to help you find your mission of what you're here to do. I really, really believe in it as a modality and a vehicle, right up there with exercise. Totally agree.
Oh gosh. I mean, I sometimes get asked, well, how do I know if coaching is for me, or who should use a coach? So if you think having social and emotional intelligence is important, if you recognize that things happen every day that potentially compromise your emotional intelligence and your social intelligence, that potentially compromise your creativity, that potentially compromise your optimism, coaching is where it's at. And it's not about, waiting until you have problems and have to diagnose things anymore. It's about integrating all these, radical and in some cases ancient tools that have proven to be extremely effective in supporting humanity since the dawn of time. And
Yeah.
the reality is that when you're in entrepreneurship or when you're a leader, the need for supporting yourself in those tools and in that continuum intensifies. So I think it's imperative that if you're an entrepreneur and you're taking that on, if you are a seasoned leader or an emergent leader, meaning that you're responsible for helping, support and nurture others in any way, and you're not using coaching, you're not actually giving yourself access to the tools to reach your highest good and serve your greatest potential.
Well said. And this fills a great need in society, in the world right now. I want to be respectful of our hour, although we could totally go for another hour. Oh, I got to get on here. I got to try
We
that. I
got
got
to
to
go for
try
a cold
Sphere.
plunge. We got to go for a cold plunge, Freddie. That's what needs to happen.
It's going to happen.
It's absolutely, such an exciting time there. What we're seeing in the space of, psychedelic medicine and breath work and access to these tools is an indication of the future I think we all hold in our hearts and believe is possible and want to cultivate together.
Yeah, there's such powerful the things you just listed. They're all mediums in which we can just deepen our awareness in such a profound way. And it really does shift your role. For me, I can only speak from my experience. It shifted the way I view myself on the planet. Like I think back to you're like, oh, at 21, I did this thing with that. I was a mess at 21, beyond a mess. And that version of me was very much a consumer. I was, what can I consume? Whether it was things I wanted to do or places I wanted to live or a home that I wanted to have or an experience I wanted to consume, as opposed to now it's like, just because of the way my mind and body has evolved, it's like, I always am asking myself, I was like, what's the role of service? How can I be of service? How can I be a provider and really help my community, my friends, my partner, my people that I'm working with in business? How do we lift this up and make a better experience for everybody else? And I never, ever, ever would have had those. I never would operate this way without doing the work that we're talking about. It wouldn't have, I don't think I could have fallen into it. So it's just, again, I'm just a huge, huge fan.
And isn't that desire the gift of the last 2 to 3 years of the pandemic, of all these challenges that we've gone through as a collective? We can all in some way throw our hands up and say we're witnessing is people in our lives and community who are reassessing and reevaluating those objectives, when you talk about the material. And I was on a hike the other day with a friend whose family owns a bunch of boutique fitness centers. And he was saying that before the pandemic, that the 6 a.m. fitness classes were always booked the fastest. They were always the most popular classes with the best teachers. And now, post-pandemic, it's actually the 11 a.m., the 12 p.m., the 2 p.m., and that 6 a.m. classes are becoming harder and harder to fill. And I thought, oh God, isn't this a sign that we're moving mindfully and intentionally from hustle to gentle ambition, from unconscious capitalism to gentle ambition? And what I mean by gentle ambition is it's not a surrendering of any hopes or dreams or desires or goals, because that's part of the DNA of being human. We build things, we have incredible imaginations, we reach, we create. But it's doing this now with such a grace and a poise and a mindfulness and a gentleness that takes into consideration the effect on body, on community, on earth, as we move forward towards these objectives. And that is extremely exciting.
I agree. I had a post yesterday that I said, we were talking about getting it in. The idea of getting, one of my friends texted, what are you doing?
What are we getting in?
What am I? Yeah. And they were like, I'm getting my steps in. And I was just like, oh, I was like, strike that. I was like, I am savoring. I am relishing a walk. I'm moving through each heel to the end of my big toe, and I'm feeling what feedback the earth and the road is giving me. And just, it was like, great reframe, but yes, it's moving out of that, get it into that relishment and savoring of the moments in the day to day.
Well, you'll know I'm around because you use those beautiful words, but what I do is I'm like, woo, yes, woo, ah, whoo. I make all the tennis sounds.
Yeah.
For me, that's like, oh wow, all those like big noises just ground me so much in the moment and like help me to do exactly that, like relish, to just like really like bite into something and be like, wow, I'm here.
Yeah.
This is awesome. Even if it's 2 minutes, this is awesome. This is good for me. I love this. I'm grateful.
Yeah. There's a really famous, then I have to let you go because it's like past your time. But
Because I got some meeting.
You got some meetings to do. You're running a few things in the world. There's this really famous bodybuilder, Ronnie Coleman. And if you've ever seen Ronnie Coleman, I think he won the Mr. Olympia 8 times. He was, you got to Google him. You got to Google primetime Ronnie Coleman. And his spirit, he's been on Rogan before. His spirit is so pure. He was a police officer, just this crazy genetic capability. But anytime he would lift, he would just scream and howl, and he'd scream, "Yeah, buddy!" But he'd be, squatting like 1,000 pounds, and just this guy was a mountain. And he's still, you've seen like a bodybuilder. It's like not the greatest like health experiment long term. You kind of get like this like 8-year like flash of fire of magnificence, and then the body's like, "Oh, I didn't like what you did to me." And even now in his like deflated state, he's just, he's older. He's went through the thing. He still has the same spirit. Like in any of his Instagram videos, he's like, "Yeah, buddy." He's curling like 20-pound weights, and it's like, it's in his DNA, right? To have that impetus to just ground down.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, it's a great example.
And to double down on joy and the signal that you send to yourself, right? Even something as simple as, laughter as medicine. I use this all the time in business when, the other day we had a bug in the app that was extremely frustrating. We had to like double down on it right away. And I got on with our GM and we just looked at each other, and instead of doing what, would have been the easy thing, which anybody would have wanted to do, which was complain and be like, "Oh, this is a nightmare. Oh, this is whatever." We just got on and we burst out laughing, and we're like, "Okay, this is what's happening. What are we going to do? What's the plan?" And it's actually, it is the ultimate reframe: laughter, joy as medicine. And so whatever your yeah buddy is, that's what you gotta find, your yeah buddy.
Last question for you, Devon. Beautifully Broken podcast. What does it mean to you to be beautifully broken?
It just, that everything is art. Like everything is art. Everything is perspective, and through the eye of the beholder, that we get to make choices, that we choose how we see things, we choose how we experience things. And so there is just this incredible opportunity to look at everything as just a work of art, regardless of what it is, and to appreciate it as that.
I love that. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast and interview you. And where can people go to explore and discover Sphere?
Oh, please go to sphere.guide. Download the app, or you can head to the iOS or Android, Google Play app stores to download Sphere. It would be such a pleasure to be able to serve you. And we will be giving your community a special code that they can use because you're you. So we'll follow up and send that out. You can post it with the podcast. It would be just such a pleasure to give your community a little extra something when they jump into the Sphere app.
I love that. We're definitely going to do that. Maybe we can make it. We'll see if we can make it beautifully broken. That'll be great. We like the consistent theme. Team, seriously, like I would just, let the podcast, what you heard, wash over you. There's so many times we can hear something that's profound and we can say, yeah, that was awesome. That was awesome. Do something about this. Go check out the site, go explore, go Google Devon and listen to other versions of her story and what she's moved through to still be in the state of creation. It's a great example of human beings at their absolute best, which is what we need right now. I am going to close it down for today and wishing everybody a safe, fulfilled, heart-centered day. Namaste. Team, thank you for creating a wave of momentum that is driving season 5 of the Beautifully Broken podcast. My heart thanks you for tuning in. And if you enjoyed today's show, head over to Apple Podcasts and now Spotify. Spotify is new and you can leave a review. 5 stars if you loved it. And before you go, I have something really important I need to offer. There are 2 ways we can build this relationship. The first is to join my membership program at buymeacoffee.com/FreddieSetGo. You get early access to all the podcasts, bonus episodes, discounted consults, and free webinars covering all the wellness technologies. The second is to support beautifullybroken.world. That's right, I have a brand new website and new store, beautifullybroken.world. Listed on here are all the wellness tools, supplements, educational courses, and products that I absolutely love. Most of them offer significant discounts by clicking the link or using the code. Please know that they don't cost you anything extra. And at the same time, they do support the podcast through affiliations. What's that? I just got a message from my lawyers, my internet team of lawyers. They wanted me to tell you that the information on this podcast is for educational purposes only. By listening, you agree not to use the information found here as medical advice. Do you agree? Yes, you agree. To treat any medical condition in yourself or others, always consult your own physician for any medical issues that you may be having. Finally, our closing. The world is changing. We need you at your very best. So always take the steps to be upgrading your energy, your mindset, and your heart. Remember, while life is pain, putting the fractured pieces back together is a beautiful process. I love you. I'm your host, Freddie Kimmel.